Have you ever lain in bed, eyes closed, yet your mind just wouldn't stop running? Not because of caffeine, not because of deadlines, but because you kept thinking, did I hurt someone's feelings? Should I text and apologize? Was I kind enough today? Many sleepless people aren't weak, they're too good, too considerate of others' emotions, too afraid of upsetting anyone, too obsessed with being seen as kind and gentle, and that constant effort, the effort to be a good person, keeps the mind working all night, as if letting go for a moment would make that good image collapse. But what if the real cause of your sleeplessness isn't stress or hormones? What if it's the quiet fear of losing the image of being a good person in someone else's eyes? The good person trap. Being a good person sounds simple, an ideal everyone is told to aim for. It's honored in textbooks, praised in school ethics, and worn like a medal in every culture. No one teaches us to question the value of being good. Because no one asks, good becomes the default setting. So default that we stop noticing its definition at all. Once good turns default, behavior gets judged by social standards rather than inner honesty, and the ego, quick, clever, highly adaptable, learns to perform goodness to be liked, praised, and protected. When good becomes a role, from here, being good is no longer a path of living truthfully, it becomes a survival strategy. Some people grow endlessly, gentle, agreeable, a great listener, always giving in not because they truly want to love others, but because they want to preserve a kind image. Others never show anger, never disagree, never upset anyone, not because they're always at peace, but because they fear losing their good person status in other people's eyes. Layer by layer, a moral mask forms thickened by compliments, approving looks, and the constant applause of social expectations. The danger of repetition. Repeat any role long enough, and it turns into part of your personality. Once the ego merges with the good person role, any behavior that slips outside that image triggers guilt and shame. You can no longer tell what is genuinely you and what is programmed by fear of judgment. This is no longer natural ethics. It's socially framed morality, a self-image shaped to fit public expectations. And in trying to be good by standard criteria, many of us lose the most humane thing we have, honesty with ourselves. Where the script begins. Before good person becomes a life goal, it's planted in us as a desired model. From childhood, we're praised for obedience, for giving up our place, for polite words, for sacrificing our own needs. What few notice is that these behaviors are paired with rewards, a pleased look, a compliment, the warm safety of being accepted by the group. From the very beginning, then, good isn't a natural state. It's a conditioned template. Its formation comes largely from the need to keep society organized and predictable. If a community wants stability, it must promote behaviors that support the common order. For that, you need a moral standard. Whether that standard fits human nature is secondary. What matters is smooth functioning. Thus, good person becomes the emblem of the ideal citizen. Obedient, non-confrontational, easy to guide, easy to blend in. When ideals become inner pressure. In traditional religious or educational settings, good can be inflated into a moral absolute. The good person does the right thing even when no one sees, forgives, endures, loves, unconditionally. But here's the paradox. When these standards are imposed as duties, they easily mutate into inner oppression. You must smile when you want to cry. You must be silent when you want to scream. You must be kind while your insides are hurting and resisting. Good isn't neutral. It isn't just a description of behavior. It carries a value system, a judgment tool, and most importantly, a form of behavioral control through guilt and social expectation. When someone fails to match the model, they feel bad, defective, in need of repair. So good person becomes not only an ideal to reach, but also an invisible tool that makes people self-police, not out of wisdom, but out of fear of being excluded. And notice, what counts as good changes across cultures, religions, and regimes. That alone shows good is not a universal truth. It's a social product. If it's a product of conditioning, it's not the same thing as truth. It's a role encouraged to keep the structure intact. How the ego learns the part. The ego refuses to disappear. That's its operating principle. To remain, it adapts by any means necessary, including becoming good. In a society that prizes virtue and niceness, those respected are the tolerant and appropriately compassionate. The ego learns to display those traits not out of love, but as a survival strategy. Much moral behavior doesn't arise from insight or genuine compassion, but from an unconscious mechanism protecting one's image. A person who never gets angry isn't necessarily at peace. They may simply fear being labeled hot-tempered. A person who always yields isn't necessarily humble. They may just fear displeasing others. The ego is a skilled actor. It observes, imitates, practices, and becomes convincing. It knows when to smile, when to keep quiet, when to show the right amount of tolerance to be seen as deep. Over time, these behaviors become so smooth that even the person themselves believes they are truly kind. But often, much of it is only the survival skill of an ego disguised in morality. The role of good person shifts from social image to identity. One starts to see oneself as the embodiment of rightness, of correctness, of integrity. The predictable consequence? We start hiding our not-so-good parts, uncomfortable emotions, unflattering thoughts, raw, personal wants. We don't look at our shadows not because we don't have them, but because they violate the image we've maintained for so long. Live that way long enough and the fake can look like the real. The boundary between being good and playing good disappears. The ego wins not by being obvious, but by seamlessly becoming the very image society loves most. The price of the mask. A life like this doesn't bring freedom. It brings constant caution. You must always manage yourself, adjust and control every word, and move to preserve the image. You can't rage honestly, speak plainly, or live as you truly are. Everything is filtered. However beautiful it looks, it's still inner strain because you're not living from truth, but defending an illusion. The ego isn't afraid of being wrong, it's afraid of being exposed. With the good person mask, it will gladly sacrifice authenticity to keep the spotless look. What it doesn't admit is that the more perfect the mask, the more suffocated the life within. The longer you play, the less you can return to yourself. Many carry this image like a shield to survive in groups, always pleasant, avoiding conflict, quick to yield even while feeling frozen inside. Not because they're truly forgiving or blind to problems, but because they fear what happens if they stop playing. Fear of being misunderstood, criticized, labeled difficult, or expelled from the circle of approval. So, they abandon themselves, They ignore their true feelings to keep the peace. They swallow anger, hide their hurt, smile where silence would be honest. In close relationships, they become the reasonable one, the accommodating one, the one who never makes a fuss. If you listen closely, there's a nameless tension inside a place where truth is suffocated and the inner voice is drowned to protect a role that looks noble. Unacknowledged pain does not heal. It accumulates. It sinks to the bottom of the psyche and quietly fractures us. Many kind people fall into depression, exhaustion, or inner collapse, not because they lived wrongly, but because they stopped living truthfully. Kindness without honesty becomes self-abandonment. People confuse empathy with not saying what is true. They fear that speaking truth will hurt others, but in reality, pretense is what causes the deepest, longest pain. Silence, when fueled by fear, cannot build real connection. If everyone only says what's easy to hear, every relationship becomes a stage, not a place where truth grows. The always good person often becomes someone who no longer allows themselves to be wrong, angry, weak, or still. They live as a moralized version of themselves, not because that's who they are, but because that's how they're accepted. When acceptance becomes more valuable than truth, people choose to gently reject themselves, again and again, drifting ever further from the real. A subtle kind of slavery. Such a life doesn't bring freedom. It's a refined slavery to image, to expectations, to conditioned niceness. That's the tragedy of many good people. They don't dare live truly because they fear losing the role that wins applause. In doing so, they lose something far more precious: inner wholeness, where goodness doesn't need to perform. Ethical behavior, without wisdom, easily becomes formality. Doing the right thing with the wrong motive. You can do a kind act to be praised, to be recognized, or to feel superior. Then the right thing is merely a strategy, not the expression of a clear heart. Morality taught without inner digestion becomes a control tool. People learn to label, this is good, that is bad, without asking why. They apply ethics like a recipe. Must forgive, must sacrifice, must yield without connecting to real feelings or context. Morality stops nourishing life and becomes a fence that blocks authenticity. It produces standard good people, polite and well-behaved, but lacking depth. They can say pretty words and do proper things, yet not truly be present. They may forgive while holding grudges, yield while never having been heard. Without wisdom, the ability to see the mind's nature, motives, and the ego's machinery, morality cannot free us. It often tightens the chains with noble forms. People grow proud of their kindness and don't see that this very pride keeps them locked in an image they won't break. Only when morality arises from inner wisdom, from unconditional love, from a view beyond ego, does conduct truly liberate. Then doing right is no longer a chore or a performance. It's the natural movement of a mind no longer driven by fear, expectation, or the need to prove itself. What real integrity looks like. Those who live honestly don't need to be certified as good. They don't brand themselves with moral labels or try to curate a lovable persona. They care less about praise and more about inner truth. Their actions don't come from the hunger to be liked or the terror of criticism. They can be gentle without chasing the title of kind, and firm without needing to prove anything. They speak when truth needs speaking, and stay quiet when silence is true. They don't react out of habit or role. They move from a clear seeing of what's here. That clarity doesn't come from ideology. It comes from a mind not ruled by the personal ego. Such people can act kindly, but their kindness isn't a tactic. It's the byproduct of a heart not fogged by greed, anger, or delusion. They don't have to try to do the right thing because there's no inner driver pushing them to do the wrong thing. When action isn't controlled by ego motives, even a simple word or small gesture can heal. Unlike the performer of goodness, the honest person centers on truth, not on behavior. If truth must be spoken, they speak, even if it makes others uncomfortable. If truth needs quiet, they're quiet, even if it risks misunderstanding. They won't sacrifice truth for superficial peace, nor wield truth to grandstand. They live like a clear stream. No hiding, no decorating, no showing off. They don't need people to call them good. They don't chase approval or fear being misread. They let others think as they will, and in that letting go, they slip free of moral stagecraft and social cages. They aren't good by any standard, they're alive. Sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce, sometimes silent, sometimes expressive, but always real. That, not the label of good or bad, is the most authentic influence. They don't preach morality. Their presence teaches without words. Letting go of the role. Any goodness controlled by fear or the need for approval is still a role, however subtle. The good person role is one of the hardest to drop, not because it's terrible, but because it's heavily rewarded. The ego hides most comfortably behind noble masks. Without deep honesty, we can live a whole life inside proper templates and never touch our living, undivided core. Leaving the role doesn't mean becoming cruel, selfish, or careless. It means peeling off moral shells grown by comparison, expectation, and fear. When those layers fall, we don't lose our humanity, we recover it. We can be wrong, weak, angry, imperfect, and know it without self-hatred, excuses, or makeup. That honesty becomes the foundation of real ethics. Only when we see we tried to be good to cover our fear of rejection can we stop. Only when we notice that our kindness was fed by the need to be praised, loved, and safe can we begin to be kind without a reason. That's the shift from conditional behavior to unconditional presence. It doesn't come from willpower or lofty ideals. It comes from a direct, quiet, non-defensive seeing. From there, morality stops being a duty, a tactic, or a performance. It becomes as natural as breath, as heartbeat like a tree growing without needing to prove it's a tree. The simplicity on the other side. In that simplicity, we return to an original clarity. We don't need to be good. We don't need to be anything. We can just be. Kindness stops fitting into rigid molds. It becomes soft, flexible, sincere. It can be a firm no, a steady gaze at truth, or a shared silence in a noisy room. It's no longer a look, but a state without ego's manipulation, without the urge to control, without the pressure to be adored. In that clearness, there is no ego, no role, no moral costume, only a clean awareness that lives, feels, and sees without needing a label. Ethics cease to be a target and become the natural expression of an undivided heart. If any of this touched something in you, leave a thought below, a question, a story, a confusion. I read and I listen, and I'll take the time to answer in a future video. May you stop chasing someone else's light long enough to sit with your own shadow where the truest kindness is born. If what I shared in this video feels familiar to you, take a slow, gentle breath with me. Place a hand over your heart and softly, just for yourself, say, "I love myself. I love those around me.